Hey folks, Zach Osterman here, IU Insider, Indianapolis Star, Insider video for Indiana 74, UIndy 52. I've got as you can tell, first of all, I'm at home. I came home to write after this one, just an afternoon exhibition. Figured I'd have a little more peace and quiet here. I've got the box score up on my second monitor here. I think it's fair to say just about the game more generally as the puppy tries to, you don't get these sorts of things from Assembly Hall, believe me, the puppy making a cameo. A game that probably fit the occasion in a lot of ways. Indiana looked sluggish earlier. Not necessarily sluggish, just not sharp. Missed a lot around the rim. Made some uncharacteristic mistakes. I think 7 of Indiana's 10 turnovers came in the first half. UIndy hit in the game 8 threes, but 6 of those came in the first half. There were only 2 of 16 from 3 in the second half. Again, kind of reflective of Indiana looking like a team that hasn't played a lot of basketball together. There's a lot of individual talent, but not necessarily, just kind of that instinct and that sort of second nature that comes with guys just playing a ton of minutes together and understanding how to switch coverages or how to tap switches and different kinds of things. Indiana just didn't look sharp. Mike Woodson even said he thought maybe they were a little tight playing, in front of a crowd as a group for the first time. But I thought you just saw kind of a team that was still trying to figure out, where does it go for points? Where does it go? Who's meant to sort of fill this role on offense or this role on defense? Even sometimes things as simple as trying to figure out who's supposed to fill which lanes to rebound the ball and start to break. And Indiana was down 27-25 at halftime as a result. The flip side is Indiana looked outstanding in the second half. And UIndy, obviously an exhibition opponent, but, for its level, one of the better teams in the country annually. I think they won 25, 26 games a year ago. Consistently a very good program. Frankly, in some ways, probably a tougher opponent than some of the ones Indiana's going to see in its non-conference schedule. And Indiana just in the second half really flexed its muscle, particularly defensively. UIndy was 9 of 27 from the field in the second half, 2 of 16 from 3, had as many turnovers, 10, as they had defensive rebounds. Indiana only allowed 5 assists. But then you look at those second half numbers for Indiana. They had 19 rebounds in the second half, 14 assists on 20 baskets. A little bit more foul heavy. They committed 8 fouls in the second half. Gabe Cupps and Malik Renew each had 3. Indiana didn't have a ton of foul issues in the first half, but 7 steals. And you looked at the plus minus, just good impact from your starters and also your bench. Mackenzie Mbaku and Kalel Ware, I thought, looked a lot more comfortable in the second half. Wound up being in 2 of Indiana's, sort of biggest kind of contributors offensively. And if you look at the overall game box, in a relatively low scoring game for how many possessions Indiana played, Indiana had 68 possessions, UIndy had 70. In a, that's a pretty solid possession number for, only scoring 74 points. You still spread it out. 5 players had at least 8, 3 players in double figures. Kalel Ware had 14 points and 6 rebounds. Malik Renew had 12 points and 6 rebounds. Mackenzie Mbaku had 14 and 8. I think Mike Woodson will be really happy to see 6 different players with multiple assists. Indiana is a team that really wants to, and you can see this, they want to use that length, and it is impressive when it's deployed correctly, to fill passing lanes and to spring, quick transition opportunities. Mike Woodson said, his quote, his pretty much direct quote after the game was, "I just don't want to live in a half-court game this season. I think we've got enough talent to get out there that guys can make plays." And he referenced the turnover number, only 10 turnovers. That's always going to be key to being able to run, because if you're playing too fast and you're just throwing the ball away again and again, then you're not going to feel like you can really run a transition offense. But this is a team that's going to force some turnovers this season. It is really long. It is really active. Even when maybe the chemistry is not quite there, you can see the value of a transfer like Peyton Sparks or like Anthony Walker in just some of those innate sort of basketball instincts and basketball plays that a guy who's been around long enough just kind of knows when to stick his hand into a passing lane, when to jump something, whatever. And it wasn't by accident Indiana had 28 fast break points in this game. And that's not something we would have said about Indiana, maybe even in games like this relative to the opponent all the time last season. Now, it's not like they're going to have that many every single game, but it's just more of an emphasis because I think this team is going to be a little bit more active defensively. I think it's certainly longer defensively. That's going to mean more deflections. It's probably going to mean more steals, more turnovers. And then when you start pouring forward in numbers with, guys like Xavier Johnson and Trey Galloway that can pass the ball well, and guys like Malik Renew, Mackenzie Mbako, Khalil Ware, that are, Anthony Walker, frankly, are just big athletic guys, you get harder and harder to defend in transition in what's already not a really ideal sort of situation for a defense anyway. I think on the balance, it was a good first exhibition for Indiana, to win by 22. You got to see a few warts or a few, you got to see some of your flaws and work through those a little bit. I don't think it's surprising to see the scoring distributed the way it is. I don't think there's a guy on this team that's going to be an 18-8 player, at least right now, maybe by the end of the season. But I don't think there's a Trace Jackson Davis that is sort of your just absolute can't live without him focal point on this team. And I think there's an extent to which Mike Woodson wants it that way. I think there's guys who have to fill certain roles, Xavier Johnson being a great example. But I think, Indiana can live with a night where Xavier Johnson has 9 points, but he's got 4 rebounds and 5 assists, and you feel like he just kind of made a lot of the right decisions and got guys involved and, knew when to attack and when to pull the ball back and when to shoot, when to pass, etc. I think there is just going to be an attempt to sort of build more of a team that can hit you and hurt you a lot of different ways. And this afternoon was a pretty good reminder that it's not all going to come at once. Indiana's going to have some growing pains. As I've said on our podcast, and I said to somebody today, Indiana, first 2 months of the season is probably going to have some rough patches, probably going to have some speed bumps. But, if this was a game to maybe remind you that this team's floor is almost certainly lower than where Indiana was a season ago, it's also a game to remind you that this team's ceiling might be higher just because of how much length and how much athleticism it has, how different it can play, how much more up-tempo at times. And then in the same breath, I think when it needs to, and I think you saw a little bit of this in the first half, again, admittedly against an exhibition opponent, I think in the same breath, you also see a team that can probably grind out some possessions defensively and can recognize, okay, shots aren't going down, we're struggling to find our offense, but what we're going to do is just keep sort of grinding out good quality defensive possessions and be really hard to score on, and eventually that'll turn things around. So we'll leave it there for now. Indiana back in action Friday against Marion, then, of course, the football game Saturday against Wisconsin. But between now and then, for the Indianapolis Star, I'm Zach Osterman. This has been your Insider video after Indiana 74, UIndy 52. We'll talk to you soon.